Okay. So try to understand this content nodes and component again. In the previous session, we discussed about components and component usage. Component we always create under apps folder. Apps, news portal component. So in this location, we'll create a new component. So in the last session, we have created article detail is the component. In the article detail HTML is the file. The entire HTML markup will write inside this .html file. So this is very important HTML file to render the article title, article description, and article image, other article detail related content. Then what is the use of this content node and how this content would interact with the components? So these two questions are very important. The content nodes are part of the page. In this example, Jailer movie trailer is a page. It is available under content. As we discussed in the previous session, all the web pages, assets, content fragments, experience fragment will store into the content folder only. Even this page also a part of the content folder. Jailer movie trailer is the page. Inside this page, it required multiple child nodes. JCR content, root, and container is a mandatory child node. Under container, article detail is the content node. This content node name and component name may be similar or different. Even we can give it different names also. So here the name of the node is very not important. So this content node must have one property called sling to source type property. The value of this property is your component path. Component path. But this is a relative path and this is not a complete path. If it is relative path, it will check in apps folder. So it will copy or it will read this component path and go to the apps folder and check the news portal and then component and then article detail component. So this property is very important to connect a content node with component. So both will be available in two different locations. Components are always available in apps folder. Content nodes are available either con folder or content folder. Either con folder or content folder. And this content node will be useful to connect with the component with the help of sling to source type property. With the help of sling to source type property. So one more important point, we can't access this component or we can't execute this component without this content node. A request should go through this content node only. Without this content node, we can't execute this component. We can't directly execute from the browser. We always access through the content nodes only. Then how to create this content node? So we don't need to create this content node manually. So if you want to use any component, go to this page by using your browser, localhost 4502, and then access this page by using this path, content, news portal, USEN article, jailer movie teller.html file, and drag and drop the required component. Whenever you drag and drop a required component, automatically this content node will generate internally in JCR repository. Internally in the JCR repository, this content node will generate and it will add this property also. Sling resource type is the property, value is component path. Value is component path, value is a relative path of the component. We have to append /apps. We'll discuss in detail at the time of sling request to processing concept. So this execution flow is very important. Let me know if you have any questions in this execution flow. Any questions in this execution flow? This content nodes creation or sling resource type property or this component creation. Let me know if you have any questions. So these three are the three different article pages we have created in the previous session. Let's use the same pages for content configuration. Okay. So in these three pages, we have used article detail component. So that means these three pages will have article detail content node. Whenever you drag and drop a component in a page, internally one content node will generate. And that content node should have linked to source type property. The value of that property is your component path. Expand article 1. We'll see the different content nodes on different pages. So this is the default behavior of AEM. In all pages, article detail content node is available because we have drag and drop this article detail component in article 1, article 2, and article 3. And every content node must have this link to source type property. Value is article detail component path. If you append apps, news portal component, article append details is the location of your component. Location of your component. Then what is the use of this content node? Is it only for connect with the component? No, there are two different use cases. One is to connect with the component and second one is to store the content. To store the content. Content means normal text or image references, document references, video references, or any external page links, any external page link. Entire content will store in article detail content node. The name itself indicates content node. It will always store the content. And this component always store the code, means HTML code. HTML code will store in .html file. Content will store in article detail content node. In the runtime, this content node content will inject into HTML markup and generate the final HTML markup. In the next step, I'm going to show you how to create content in article detail content node and then how to read that content inside article detail component. If we go to any page and open this article detail component dialog, only one field is rendering here. In order to configure or in order to make this content dynamic, both the title and description image, we have to create a different fields in this dialog. For article details, we need one field. Article description, we need one field. And article image configuration, we need one field. As a developer, you have to identify the different type of content in your component. In this simple component, we have three type of fields. Three type of data is available. Title is one field, and description is one field, and image is one more field. As a developer, we should be able to identify the number of fields required for this component to make this component content is a configurable content. So in our case, three different fields are required. One is for the configuration of article title, article description, and article image. Then how to build this dialog and how this dialog will be useful. Remember one important point here. This dialog is just interface. User interface to create the data into the content node. If you open the dialog of this component, enter some text here. For example, sample text for article details is the text. And click on done button. This text will be stored into the content node of this page. At present, we are in article 3 page. In this 3 page, there is one article detail content node. In this content node, this data will store. Because this dialog is user interface to store or edit the data from the content node. Click on done button and go to article 3 page and refresh this article detail content node because we have modified this article detail component in article 3 and check text is a property name and this is the value we have configured. A dialog is user interface. It will be useful to store the data into the content node. The content nodes are part of the pages. Content nodes are the part of the pages. This content node will generate whenever you drag and drop the component into the pages. And open the dialog of this component. And see, it will repopulate the values. It will repopulate the existing values. If you want to modify this value, modify and click on done. Again, the updated value will store into the content node. Again, the updated value stored into the content. So here the purpose of the dialog is store the content into the content node. Because this content creation is content author's responsibility. So they should able to add the content without accessing the CRXDE. Because content authors are the non-technical team, they don't know how to update these nodes and properties. So that's why as a developer, we have to provide this interface to modify the content of this component. Content of the component. Even if you are a developer, if you have access, you can directly add the content, update the content here. For example, let me update the value to 3.0 and save the changes, but not recommended. But sometimes we have to add the properties from the CRXD directly into JCR repository as a developer. Now close it and open it. Whenever you open, it will pull the data from the content node. See, it will always pull the data from this content node. It will go to this page. It will go to this page and identify the container which is available, this component, and read the properties from that content node and populate here. So it's a two-way communication. Either we can modify directly in JCR content nodes or we can modify from the dialog. So this is the purpose of the dialog in our component. When you're drag and dropping component, that's why the dialog is mandatory. Without dialog, we can't drag and drop the component. It won't allow to drag and drop the component. So this is the purpose of the dialog. Let me know if you have any question before implementing this custom dialog from the scratch. Any questions? Oh. To implement the dialog, Adobe provided two frameworks. One is Granite UI and second one is Coral UI. Granite UI and Coral UI. Granite UI is a collection of components. Component to build the dialog. Dialog and its fields. Example, text field is one of the component. Text field is one of the component. It will be useful to generate one text field in our dialog. So see, this is a text field, but internally it uses one Granite text field component. So all these Granite UI components are out-of-box components. By default, it will be available on your AEM installations. We can directly use this Granite UI component to build the dialog. There is huge number of fields are available: text field component and text area component, select component, and checkbox component, and path field component, path browser component. Huge number of components are available, and these component will be useful to render the fields in dialog. Then how to use this? Then how to use these components in our dialog? How to use this component out of box Granite UI component in our dialog? We just discussed. If you want to use any component, content node is mandatory. Even to use the Granite UI component, content nodes are mandatory. But in this case, content nodes are automatically generated by the AEM whenever you drag and drop a component on page. But while building the dialog, we have to create content nodes manually. And we have to give Sling resource type property and its value manually. Yeah. So this is the hierarchy of the dialog. This is the top level hierarchy of the dialog. The dialog always contains content nodes. The dialog always contains content nodes. The top level node name of the dialog is seek equivalent dialog. We should not change this name. We should not change this name. Seek equivalent dialog is a mandatory child name while creating any dialog. While creating any dialog, but the type of the dialog node, it may be unstructured or any node type. Here, the node type is not important. We can use anti-unstructured. This is one content node. As we discussed, content node required sling resource type property. Sling resource type property and value of this property is CQGUI component authoring dialog. This is one of the out-of-box component. This is one of the out-of-box component to build the dialog. It will be available in libs. So not only dialog, all the out-of-box component would be available under libs only. So there are two important folders in CRXDE, right? CRXDE means JCR repository, apps and libs folder. Apps is for the custom implementation. Libs is for out-of-box implementation. Means the default implementation of the Adobe would be available under libs. See, this component also would be available under libs only. Libs, CQ, GUI, components, authoring, dialog. Authoring and dialog. And this node requirement property called GCR title, but this is optional property. Optional property. Under the seek equivalent dialog, content is one more mandatory child node. Content is a mandatory child node of the seek equivalent dialog. Even we can't change this name. It should be content only. And every content node requires string resource type property. And this property pointing to container component. So this is the mandatory content node hierarchy for the dialog. You have to remember this node hierarchy and node property values. Node property value. This is a mandatory hierarchy of the dialog implementation. The top level node name is seek equivalent dialog. It should pointing to dialog component by using sling resource type property. And second level is content. It should pointing to container. So here container is one of the out-of-box component. Container is one of the out-of-box component. Out-of-box component, it will be available under libs. Libs, Granite, UI components, Coral Foundation components. Whenever you use a container component, container is a container component. There is multiple container components are available in the Granite. For example, select is one container is one container, field set is one container. Whenever you are using the container component, you have to create one mandatory child node called items. Items is a mandatory child node for the container components. If you are using container component, immediate child node must be items. Items. All are content node. Each content node is pointing to one of the out-of-box components. Let's create these nodes and properties.
Hello.
Yeah.
So here you said that content always points to the container, which is the out-of-box component, right?
Correct.
So in all the cases, for every component, it will be out-of-box component.
While implementing the dialog, all the component will be out of box only. But even we can write the customized component, but not required. Majority of the cases, these out of box components are sufficient to build the dialogs.
Okay. So, and also, how we can identify that is out-of-box component?
Based on the path. So, for example, path start the CQ. Path start with the CQ. It must be out of box. For example, even we can identify based on the location. For example, this is one of the component path, right? CQs, GUI component authoring dialog. Go to CRXD, append apps, and click on enter. See, this component is not available in the apps folder. This is a relative path. If it is relative path, first we have to search in apps folder. See, this component is not available in the apps folder. Then search with the libs. The component would be available either apps or libs. See, it is available in the libs folder.
Okay.
If it is ellipse means out of box.
Okay. And also you said ETC, right? Lips and ETC both are out of box
ETC won't contain any component, contain some configurations and script files will be available under ETC.
Okay.
Okay, I'm removing sling so super type property because I don't want to use this hello world dialog now. Let's implement the dialog from the scratch. Save the changes and create a node called seek equivalent dialog. Seek equivalent dialog, and this is NT unstructured dialog. Save the changes. The top level node name must be seek equivalent dialog. We can't change this name. And this node should have sling resource type property. Sling resource type property. Copy the value from here. But you don't need to remember this entire component path because there are some out of box components are available. You can simply copy paste from the out of box components. So this is the first content node in your component. Node name is equivalent dialog and it is pointing to dialog component. Dialog component. Add JCR title. JCR colon title and values article details. You can give any value here. Article detail properties. Save the changes. And create one more mandatory child node called content. So it should be available under SQL and Dialog as a child node. And this component should point into container. Container. If you are using container means it required mandatory child node called items. Mandatory child node called items. Items is a mandatory child node for every container content node. Save the change. So these three nodes are mandatory child node for every dialog implementation. But don't try to remember these link resource type values because if you want to create a dialog, you can simply copy paste from the existing component and make the required changes. And we don't create each and every node manually in the real time. Just for the practice purpose, for your understanding, I'm implementing this dialog from the scratch. But in the real time, whenever you want to create a new dialog, simply copy paste the dialog from other component and make the required changes in that pasted component, pasted dialog. Okay, so I have added three fields. Let's see look and feel of this dialog. Refresh once. Refresh once. See, this is the view of the dialog presentation. Without any field, we don't have any fields in the dialog because we did not add any fields in this dialog. Only three nodes are added. Those three nodes will be useful to render this top level view of the dialog. This title and close buttons and cancel button and done buttons are generated from these three dialog node structure. So once you create these three nodes, based on your requirement, you have to add the multiple nodes under items. Under items, you have to add the multiple nodes. For example, I need article title field. Article title is a text field because article title means it may be one line or two lines field. Text field is enough. You will find out the list of required components here. Grenade farm component, text field is one component, text area, path field, path browser, checkbox, select, number field, date picker, multi-field. But there is n number of grenade UI components are available, and these components will be useful to generate the text fields in the dialog. Let's use let's use this grenade component one by one. Let's use text field to generate the article title. Under items, I'm creating one more node called article-title. So here the node name is not important. It could be any value. This node name is not important, but you always relevant names only, because by seeing this name you can easily identify, okay, this is the field to configure the article title. And use text field. Save the changes and open the dialog again. Cancel and open. Now you can see the text field here. You can see the text field here. Because I'm using text field grenade component as part of article title content node. And similarly, let me create article description. Simply copy paste the node. So we have to create all the node under items only. Article description. And one more node for article image. One more node for article image. Total 3 nodes I have created. Each node is pointing to one component. Of course, all 3 nodes are pointing to text field only. Open the dialog. See, 3 different text fields are generated in the dialog. 3 different text fields are generated in the dialog. Okay, you are the developer, you know this is the field for article title, and this is the field for article description, this is the field for article image. But these dialogs are used by the content author. So how does a content author know the purpose of this field? So by seeing this field, they can't understand that the purpose of this field is for article title. So for the better readability purpose, we have to add one more property called field label. Field label is one of the required property. It will be useful for readability purpose. Field label is one of the property. Add article title. Save the changes. And copy the same property and paste into article description. Article description. And update the field label is article description. And paste into article image. And update the field label as article image. So this field label for readability purpose. If you have experience in HTML side, while generating any form, label is required. Label is required for the readability purpose. First name, last name, email ID, phone number. Before the text field, we have to mention the label. So this field label also similar to label in HTML forms. Close the dialog and open the dialog. Now the field labels are. So this field label only for readability purpose. By seeing this field label, the content authors can understand the purpose of this field. Purpose of this field. Let me add. I'm adding some title here. Click on done button and reopen the dialog. See. So when you enter some value, click on done button, and when you reopen it, existing value should repopulate here. If it is not repopulating, means the content is not stored into the content node. The content is not stored into the content node. That's why when I reopen the dialog, the content is not repopulated in this dialog fields. The reason is we have to add one more property called name property. We have to add one more property called name property. And the value of this name property should start with a dot slash and then camel case and then camel case. So this property is very important property. Without this property, we can't store the data into the content node. Without this property, we can't store the data into the content node. And while giving the value start with the dot slash and then camel case. And don't give any spaces or any special characters while giving the name property. This is very important property. So now when you open the dialog, enter the value, click on done button, that value will store as property in the content node. While storing, this name act as a property name. Article title is a property name. Value is whatever the value you enter in the dialog. Let me repeat the same property into article description. Don't give the same name for all fields. You have to give a different name for different fields. Article image, article title, article description, and article image. Three different fields are generated. On each field, field label and name property is added. The name property value should be different from the different fields. Close it and reopen again. Now enter title, image path, or else let me give this image path. Let me give this image path. Click on done button. Reopen the dialog again. See, now the values are populating. So that means this entire data is stored into the content node of this article 3 page. So we have used this component in article 3. In this component, we have configured title and description and image. Title and description and image. So this data will store into the content node. Go to article 3, refresh article description. See this article description. So this is the name property we have mentioned in the dialog, article title, article description, and article image. While storing the data, that name property value stored as a key in the property, article description, and this is the value we have given. And article image, and this is the image path I have given. Article title, and this is the value I have given in the title. So this is how we have to build the dialog to store the data into the content. Let me know if you have any questions in the dialog implementation. Any questions or any confusions, let me know. I will repeat it again. Devendra, Jansi, Krishna, Bharati. Any questions? Okay, so based on the field, we have to change the field type. For example, article title. For article title, text field is sufficient because we'll give 1 or 2 lines of article title. But in the article description, we have to give the large number of lines, multiple lines, maybe 5 lines, 10 lines, 20 lines, or 30 lines of description we have to mention. So here the text field is not recommended. Use text area. Use text area component. So instead of text field graded component, use text area. So basically here we have to use RT, rich text editor. I will explain later. Rich text is recommended to compare with text area. Rich text also one of the out of box component. Text area is one of the grenade component. It will be useful to configure the multiple lines of the text. See, this is called a text area. And similarly for article image. So here we have to copy paste the image every time. Copy paste this image every time. So this is a difficult process and this is a time consuming process for the content authors. Every time content author has to go to assets console and copy the path and paste here. So we should be able to browse the entire repository from this field. We should be able to browse the entire repository from this field. For that, use path field. Path field. So instead of text field, use path field. save the changes, cancel it, and reopen again and see. The path field and text field both are similar, but path field contains an additional option called browse option. With this browse option, we can browse the entire repository. Click on browse button. It will open one window with this entire JCR repository. See, this is JCR repository view. Content, under content DAM, and under DAM news portal and images, and then we can select the images. So without typing or without copy pasting the image path or document path or video path, we can browse the entire repository with the help of path field. It is similar to text field only, but it contains additional ability to browse the entire repository and to select a particular resource. So here the resource means assets, documents, or videos. Let me delete this entire path. So this is empty now. Click on browse button. See, when you click on browse button, this is the root folder in JSR repository, and then click on content and click on DAM and click on news portal. So here multiple clicks are required in order to navigate to news portal images. News portal images. Again, this is also a time consuming process to the content author. Click on root, content, DAM, news portal assets. But we can avoid this issue by adding one more property called root path. A root path. Here we mention content, DAM, news portal, images. Now when you click on browse button, directly it will open the images folder. So the difference between root path and without root path is if you don't mention the root path, you have to select from the scratch content, DAM, news portal, images. If you mention the root path, when you click on browse button, directly it will open the images folder. Directly it will open the images folder. Remove this one. Now click on browse button. See, directly it is open the images folder. So we can skip the clicking the content and DAM and news portal. Directly it is opening news images folder because we have to select the images from this folder only. Directly we can select a particular image and click on done button. So these are the three different important fields to build the dialog. Build the dialog. Any questions to build these three fields? Are you clear on implementation of this dialog? Text field, text area, and path field. Any questions? Okay, so once you store the data by using the dialog in the content node, we have to read the data into the component. In our component, these entire properties are hard coded. In our component.html file, entire fields are hard coded. So remove the hard coded one and use HTML expression $curly braces properties dot article title $curly braces properties dot article description $curly braces properties dot article image. So this is the HTML syntax. We'll discuss later about this HTML concept. But remember, $curly braces is expression of HTML. $curly braces and properties of an object, and then property name, article title, article description, article image. These are the properties are available in the content. These properties are available in the content. See. So we are trying to read these properties by using this expression $curly braces properties dot article title. dollar curly braces properties dot article description, dollar curly braces properties dot article image. So here article title and description and image is the properties of this content node. When you access this page from the browser, this content node will execute one by one. For example, article detail is one content node. This content node will execute. While executing this content node, it will forward the request to article detail component based on Sling resource type property. Based on Sling resource type property. Based on this property, the request will forward from page content node to component. Component. This is the component. In the component, this .html file will execute. And while executing, it will read the data from the content. Because in order to execute this component, the request should come from the content node. From that content node, these properties will read article title, article description, and article image. Article title, article description, and article image the content node properties. And these content node we have created from the dialog. Now click on done button. See, the data is changing now. The data is changing now. If we change to 2.0, click on done button. See, content is updating. And article description 2.0, the content is being updated. And go to article 2, refresh once now, it will return empty article detail component because there is no content in this content node. This is a different page, it contains a different content node. In this content node, we don't have article title, article image, article description properties. And open this dialog, configure different value here, India versus Park. And configure a different image. I'm able to configure different content in my second page, but component is same, but content is different. I'm able to configure different content and go to article 1. So here you can configure different value. Refresh it once. So this is how we have to build the component for the reusability purpose. I'm using same component in 3 different pages. I'm able to configure different title, different description, and different images. Different images. If you go to preview mode, inspect element, check the HTML markup. Check the HTML markup. H1 tag, div tag, image tag. So these 3 tags we have created in article detail.html. The HTML markup is same for all places. And if you go to article 2, check the HTML markup. HTML markup will be same because same component will execute. Same component will execute. That's why HTML markup will be the same. H1 and div and image. HTML markup will be the same. But content will be different for the different pages. Because content nodes are different for the different pages. But component is same. Same component will execute in all places. But the request will come from the different content node. And this different content nodes contain a different content. So this is how we have to build a reusable component. A reusable component in your project implementation. So this is the core concept that if you have any questions in implementation, I will repeat it because if you can't understand this implementation, you can't understand the next concepts like client leaps and design dialog implementation. So those implementation you can't understand. Let me know if you have any questions here.
Shamu, you will explain. There was some other property called sling resource super type. That is separate discussion, right?
In the previous concept, like the component, we have discussed about sling resource type property. That is a component level, sorry, sling to super type property. So that is a component level property. So it will be useful for inheritance purpose. If you want to define a component as a parent component, and if you want to inherit the resources of that component into the child component, we can use sling resource super type property. Again, I will explain at the time of template concept. Maybe tomorrow's concept, I will explain about the sling resource super type property.
Thank you.
Okay, let's implement other fields as well. So text field is completed, text array is completed, path field is completed. Path browser and path field will be the same. Look and feel wise, everything is same. But path browser is old implementation. Path field is a new implementation. Let's implement checkbox and select its drop down and number field and date picker and multi-field. But not required this field in article detail component. Just for the practice purpose, I'm going to create it. For example, checkbox. Let's use checkbox and copy paste article image. So rather than creating the node from the scratch, article status is the node name and it should point into checkbox. And change the name also, article status, and this root path is not required. Article status, save the changes. Save the changes. And let's implement number field and date picker also. Copy paste the nodes and change the grenade component. Number field, right, article read time. And this node should point into number field. And change the name. And change the field label also. So we have to give a different field label, different name property for every field. Article expiry. Date picker. Save the changes. So we have added 3 more fields in the dialog. Article status is a checkbox, and article read time is a number field, and article expiry is a date picker. And go to edit mode and open the dialog again and scroll down. So checkbox is rendering, but the field label is returning null. And read time is a number. It will accept only the number. For example, 5 means 5 minutes. And article expiry is a date picker. So based on the requirement, we have to use this field type. For example, article expiry is 30/3004. But why this field label is returning null? There is a slight different implementation required for the checkbox. In the checkbox implementation, we can't use this field label. Instead of field label, we have to use text. Instead of field label, we have to use text. Save the changes. And we have to add one more property called value property. Value property. value property as well. So these two properties are the different property for the checkboxes. But the remaining fields, the property names are same. Field label property and name property, these property names are same, but values are different. But the same properties we can reuse in other field types as well. See, now it is returning article status. So instead of field label, use text to render the label in checkboxes. Yeah. Total 6 fields we have implemented. So let's implement select now. Let's implement select now. You can change the order. Use select. Say the changes and open it. See, this is one drop down, but values are not displaying here because we did not configure options in this drop down. Article title type is one of the grenade field component. Type is select, but values are not configured. These drop down values are not configured. In order to configure the values, we have to use items child node because select is a container. It contains multiple options. We have to create items child node. Items child node. Under items, add the options one by one. For example, option number 1 is H1. H1 is option number 1. And option number, let's complete the option number 1. In this option number, we have to mention two properties. One is text. Text is for the display purpose. H1 is the text. And second property is value property. H1. And similarly, let's add two more or three more options. H1, H2, okay, my bad. I have a wrong place. Copy the property from here. Remove from items. So I have added three options in the selector. Type is select. Items is a mandatory child node. Under items, first option is H1. For every option, two properties required: text property and value property. Text properties for the displaying purpose and value for the storage purpose. When you select H1, this H1 value will store to the JSR reporter. But on dialog H1 display, this text will display, but internally it will store H1 value into JSR reporter. Close it and open again. See, three options are displaying: H1, H2, and H3. If you select H2, click on done button. So this value will stored in the SR repository as a property. See, title type H2, small H2. So that is the value in the dialog. That is the value in the dialog. H2 is for the displaying purpose and value for the storage purpose. Text field, text area, path field, checkbox, select, number field, and date picker. So these are completed. There is one more important field called multi-field. Multi-field also one more important field. Let's use this field to configure article labels. Article labels. Multi-field. Article labels. Save the changes. Now refresh the page. No need to refresh the page. Just close the dialog and open the dialog again. Close the dialog and open the dialog. I'm not able to open this dialog. Reason, this multi-field required one mandatory chain node called field. One mandatory chain node called field. You have to remember this multi-field implementation. Multi-field is required mandatory chain field called field. Let's create a field. Field is a mandatory chain node. In the field also we need string resource type property. The field also we need resource type property. And here mention text field, for example, text field. Text field. And one more change, we should not do the name property in the multi-field. Copy the multi-field name property and paste to the field. Save the changes. We can remove from here. Save the changes. So this is called a multi-field implementation. In the multi-field also one node is required and you should point it to multi-field and field label also required. In the multi-field, field is a mandatory child node. It should pointing to one field type. I will explain later what is the purpose of this field type. And in the field name also required. We should not mention this name in the multi-field. It should required in field child node. And open now. So this is called a multi-field. In the multi-field add button will be displayed. When you click on add button, one field will generate. One field will generate when you click on add button. This field configuration added in the field child node. In the field child node, that configuration added. Now, in the multi-field, whenever you click on add button, this field will generate. The field type is text field. If you mention path field, it will generate the path. And if you mention the checkbox, it will generate the checkbox. So the field is important to generate whenever you click on add button. Now, when you click on add button, one text field is generating because in the field child node we have mentioned string resource type is text field. So here movie is one label, Tamil is one label, India is one more label. Let's say I'm adding 3 labels. So there is no limit here. We can add n number of labels. N number of labels. So this is a multi-field. Multi-field, we can generate the multiple fields by clicking add button. We can delete this option and reorder these options also by using this option, by using these buttons. By using these buttons. Click on Done button. So this data also stored into the JSR repository content nodes. In Article 3, article details is a content node. In that content node, article labels also will store. Click on Done button and go back to the content nodes in Article 3. Refresh it. See, article label also stored. But it is storing as a string array because we have the multiple values, right? These values will store as an array. Article label is a field name. Type is string array. Values are movie, Tamil, and Indian. Movie, Tamil, and Indian. So this is called multi-field implementation. It will be useful to generate the multiple fields when you click on add. Any questions in this multi-field implementation? Any questions? So in this multi-field, there is one more option called composite multi-field. Composite multi-field is different. In the composite multi-field, when you click on add button, it will generate the multiple fields. At present, when you click on add button, only one field is generating. But in the composite multi-field, when you click on add button, multiple fields will generate. So that is called composite multi-field. Let's implement that composite multi-field also in the dialog.
Chavu, composite multi-field means it is like nested multi-field.
Nested multi-field is different. Nested multi-field is a multi-field. It contains a let me implement this now. I'll explain after this implementation.
Okay.
Paste. Related articles. Related articles. Related articles. Okay. Related articles. So here we have to add one property called composite. This is the first difference between a normal multi-field and composite multi-field. Composite is a property we have to add in order to implement this composite multi-field. This is one additional property is required. Additional property is required. Click on field and change this name. Related articles. Save the changes. Save the changes. And here, instead of pointing to one component, here we have to do the container. So in this case, when you click on add button, it is always generate one field only. In the field configuration, only one field is configured. When you click on add button, only one field is generated. If you want to generate the multiple fields, we have to use container here. Container path, we have mentioned content. So instead of text field, use container. Inside container, create items because container is a container component. It required items child log. Under items, you can mention multiple fields. Related article title. I'm giving article title as a name. Article path. Content news portal, USEN. Done. So, and the related article is a composite multi-field. Based on this property, we can easily identify whether the field is a normal multi-field or composite multi-field. For every composite multi-field, field is a mandatory child node. It should point into container. Under container, items is again a mandatory child node. Under items, based on the requirement, we can mention one or more fields. So here I have mentioned article title and article path. Now, when you click on add button in the related articles, these two fields will generate. These two fields will generate because this is a composite multi-field. Composite multi-field means when you click on add button, one or more fields will generate based on our requirement. See, related articles. Click on add button. See, two fields are generated. A related article title and related article path. And if you give one more field here, under items, if you give one more field, when you click on add button, total three fields will generate. Total three fields will generate. When you click on add button. Let me configure title is article 1 and path is, let's select article 1 and click on add button. Article 2 and select article 2. So this is called a composite multi-field implementation. And click on done button. So this data also will store to the content node. As we discussed in the initial, so content, this dialog is an interface. This dialog is an interface. It will be useful to store the data into the content node. Whenever you make the changes in the dialog, the data will store to the content. From the content node, will read into the component by using HDL. Check the properties here, related articles. No, the property is not available. Because the related article is a composite multi-field. That composite multi-field always stores the child node of this content node. Refresh this node. See, related articles is a child node. Under related article, item 0 means first item in the composite multi-field. And these two values we have. In the second item, these two values we have given. A composite multi-field always store in the form of the child nodes. The form of the child related articles. Related article is one. So this is composite multi-field implementation. Nested multi-field means when you click on add button and you click on add button, two fields are generating here, right? Two fields are generating. These fields are the normal fields. Even we can give the one more multi-field inside the multi. If we implement a multi-field inside one more multi-field, so that is called a nested multi-field. Let's implement that also for testing purpose. So for example, article label is a multi-field. I'm using this multi-field inside items. So this is called a nested multi-field. Related article is a multi-field, composite multi-field. Inside this multi-field, when you click on add button, one more multi-field is generating. This is called a composite, nested multi-field. See, click on add button. See, related articles, related article path and related labels. Article labels. Article label is a multi-field. When you click on add button, within the multi-field, one more multi-field is implemented. So this is called a nested multi-field. The nested multi-field is not required in the normal scenarios. If there is a complex implementation, in that case, nested multi-fields are required. A multi-field inside another multi-field is called a nested multi-field. So that's all about today's session. Let me know if you have any questions in this dialog implementation. Any questions in dialogue field implementations?